Stop. Right now. Whatever you're doing, stop. Are you drowning in your own life while everyone else seems to be swimming? Have you been praying the same desperate prayers for months, wondering if God has put you on silent mode? Does it feel like you're moving through thick fog while the world around you races ahead at lightning speed? Listen to me carefully, chosen one. You didn't accidentally stumble onto this message. This isn't the algorithm. This isn't chance. This is divine intervention disguised as a YouTube video. And what I'm about to tell you will either terrify you or set you completely free. You've been feeling it, haven't you? That strange heaviness. Not depression, not laziness. Something deeper. Your body wants to sleep for days. Your spirit feels like it's been wrapped in cotton. And everyone around you is moving, hustling, achieving, while you feel like you're moving through molasses. Here's the shocking truth. They won't tell you in church. God is putting you in spiritual incubation right now, today, this very moment. You think you're failing. You think you're behind. You think you're broken. But chosen one, you're being sheltered. What if I told you that this exhaustion isn't weakness? What if this fog isn't confusion? What if this pause, this divine pause, is God pulling you into his protective care because something massive is about to shift in the spiritual realm? You're not sleeping your life away. You're being hidden away. There's a difference. And before I go any further, I want to thank every single one of you who has supported this message through super thanks. Your generosity means more than you know. You're not just donating, you're helping spread light to others who feel alone in their calling. Whether you give or not, I'm deeply grateful for your presence here. Your support, your time, your attention, it all matters. And if this message resonates with your soul, go ahead. But right now, comment 99 if your soul has felt paused, not broken, not stuck, paused. Because that's not sleep, chosen one. That's sacred stillness. The next 7 minutes will explain why God has been slowing you down and why it might just save your life. Don't you dare scroll away. Why does it feel like God is punishing you when he's actually protecting you? Why does every door slam shut just when you think you're finally moving forward? Why does your body feel like it's wrapped in spiritual cement when your mind is screaming to run? Because you're operating under human logic in a divine reality, and heaven's mathematics will blow your mind. Listen carefully, chosen one. What looks like burial to you looks like planting to God. What feels like death to your flesh feels like birth to your spirit. And what seems like silence from heaven is actually the sound of surgical precision. You see, we've been taught that God's favor looks like constant movement, green lights, open doors, non-stop breakthrough. But that's prosperity gospel nonsense. That's not how the kingdom operates. Real divine favor sometimes looks like a full stop. Think about it. When was the last time you saw a butterfly complaining about the cocoon? When did you hear a baby crying about the womb being too dark, too quiet, too restrictive? Never. Because they understand something we've forgotten. Incubation isn't punishment, it's preparation. But here's where it gets radical. Here's where heaven's logic turns our world upside down. Jesus said it himself. Whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will find it. Matthew 16:25. To be first, you must be last. To lead, you must serve. To live, you must die. And to wake up, sometimes you must fall asleep. God didn't bury you, beloved. He planted you. Same dirt, same darkness, same silence. But a grave holds death. A garden holds promise. Right now, you're in the womb of your next season. And wombs are dark, wombs are quiet, wombs are restrictive. But wombs are also where miracles grow from invisible to undeniable. Joseph knew this, 13 years from pit to palace, 13 years of what looked like God's silence. His brothers threw him in a hole. Potiphar's wife threw him in prison, but God was positioning him for Pharaoh's right hand. Every closed door was a setup. Every setback was a setup. David understood this. Anointed as king, then spent years running for his life in caves, hidden, hunted, wondering if God had forgotten his promise. But those cave years weren't wasted years. They were making years, making him into a king who could handle a kingdom. Even Jesus. 30 years of obscurity before 3 years of ministry. Heaven's son, working in a carpenter's shop. Hidden in Nazareth. No platform, no followers, no recognition. Why? Because incubation always precedes manifestation. But here's what'll shake you to your core. Here's the part that'll either offend you or free you completely. God hasn't been ignoring your prayers. He's been answering them surgically. And surgery requires anesthesia. Surgery requires stillness. Surgery requires temporary unconsciousness so the surgeon can do what needs to be done without interference. You've been under divine anesthesia, chosen one, not because God is cruel, but because He's careful. Not because He doesn't love you, but because He loves you too much to operate on you while you're awake and fighting Him. Think about this. When a surgeon puts you under, you don't feel the cutting. You don't experience the reconstruction. You don't witness the removal of what was killing you or the repairing of what was broken. You just sleep, and you wake up, indifferent. That's what's been happening to you. God has been operating on parts of your soul you didn't even know were infected, removing mindsets that were slowly poisoning your purpose, reconstructing dreams that trauma had shattered, repairing a heart that betrayal had broken. And you've been unconscious to the process because consciousness would have made you resist the very healing you've been praying for. But here's the beautiful, terrifying truth that most believers never grasp. The deeper the surgery, the longer the recovery. The more extensive the reconstruction, the more profound the rest period. The greater the calling, the more intensive the incubation. You're not stuck because you're weak. You're still because you're strong enough to carry what God is building inside you. You're paused because you're being prepared for something so massive that your current capacity couldn't contain it. This isn't about your comfort. This is about your calling. This isn't about your timeline. This is about heaven's architecture. And what God is constructing in the secret place will astound the public space. But why does it have to feel so much like death? Why does divine protection feel like spiritual paralysis? Why does God's love sometimes feel like abandonment? Because transformation and trauma use the same doorway. Because breakthrough and breakdown share the same symptoms. Because the cocoon and the coffin require the same surrender. The difference isn't in the darkness, the difference is in the designer. And your designer isn't interested in your comfort. He's committed to your completion. He's not trying to make your life easier. He's determined to make your life eternal. He's not building you a better today. He's constructing you for forever. So what happens when you finally understand that your frustration is actually God's formation? What changes when you realize that your isolation isn't rejection but selection? What shifts when you grasp that this pause isn't punishment but protection? Everything changes, because suddenly you're not fighting the process anymore. You're surrendering to it. You're not trying to wake up from the dream. You're finally ready to sleep until the work is done. You know what breaks my heart? Right now, somewhere in America, there's a 70-year-old grandmother sitting in her kitchen at 3 a.m., wondering why she can't summon the energy she once had. There's a retired teacher staring at his Bible, feeling guilty because he used to devour scripture, but now even opening it feels like lifting a 50-pound weight, and they think they're failing God. Chosen one, let me shatter that lie right now. What if I told you that what you're calling weakness, God is calling protection? What if what you're labeling as spiritual laziness, Heaven is recording as sacred obedience. Listen carefully. These aren't symptoms of your failure. These are the fingerprints of divine intervention. First sign: you're sleeping more, but it's not restful sleep. You're going to bed earlier. You're napping in the afternoon. Your body is demanding rest like never before. And you wake up feeling like you ran a marathon in your dreams. Why? Because while your flesh is resting, your spirit is working overtime. God is downloading revelations, healing generational wounds, and rewiring your spiritual DNA while you sleep. When Jacob wrestled with the angel all night, he woke up limping but blessed. Your exhaustion isn't emptiness. It's evidence of a divine encounter. Second sign: the hustle has left your bones. Remember when you used to push through everything? When rest was a 4-letter word? When you measured your worth by your productivity? That drive is gone, isn't it? And it's terrifying, because American culture taught you that stillness equals failure. But Psalm 46:10 commands us to be still and know that I am God. God is surgically removing your addiction to busyness, because what's coming next requires a different kind of strength. Not grinding strength, grace strength. Third sign: people feel distant, even family. The phone calls you used to enjoy now feel draining. The social gatherings that once energized you now require recovery time. You're not becoming antisocial. You're becoming spiritually selective. When Moses came down from Mount Sinai, his face was so radiant that people couldn't look at him. Sometimes God pulls you away from people because you're carrying frequencies they're not ready to receive. Your withdrawal isn't rejection, it's recalibration. Fourth sign: things that once felt urgent now feel irrelevant. That project you were passionate about, that goal you were chasing, that ministry you were building, they all feel distant. And that scares you because you think you're losing your purpose. But what if God is clearing the clutter? What if He's removing good things to make room for God things? Sometimes divine redirection feels like divine rejection. But trust this: when God closes one door, He's not punishing you. He's protecting you from a smaller destiny. Fifth sign: you feel pulled inward, like you're living in a cocoon. The outside world feels loud and abrasive. You crave solitude like never before. You want to be alone with your thoughts, alone with God, alone with the silence. This isn't depression, this is divine incubation. Every butterfly knows the secret. Transformation happens in the dark. You're not withdrawing from life, you're diving deeper into the source of life. Are you recognizing yourself yet? Are these symptoms making your heart race because finally someone is telling you the truth? Let me tell you what's really happening. You're not experiencing burnout. You're experiencing spiritual anesthesia. God has placed you under His divine care, numbing you to the world's demands so He can perform surgery on your soul without interference. Every surgeon knows that the patient must be still for the operation to succeed. Your stillness isn't failure, it's medical necessity. The prophet Elijah experienced this exact phenomenon. After his victory on Mount Carmel, after calling down fire from heaven, after proving God's power to an entire nation, what happened? He ran to the wilderness, sat under a tree, and prayed to die. Was Elijah having a breakdown? Number. He was being broken down so God could build him back up. 1 Kings 19 tells us that an angel had to wake him up to eat because his body was shutting down to protect his spirit. You think you're behind schedule. God says you're right on time for reconstruction. You think you're wasting precious years. God says these are the most important days of your life because He's preparing you for what you couldn't handle yesterday. You think you're missing opportunities. God says He's protecting you from distractions that would have destroyed your destiny. This isn't punishment, beloved. This is preparation. God doesn't shelter broken things. He shelters valuable things. He shelters treasures. He shelters what he's about to promote. Every caterpillar that resists the cocoon dies as a caterpillar. Every caterpillar that surrenders to the process emerges as something that can fly. Which one are you going to be? Pause right now and type, "It wasn't burnout, it was God." Because until you recognize that this season isn't about what you're losing, but what you're gaining, you'll keep fighting the very process that's designed to save your life. But here's what happens when you finally surrender to the incubation. Dear chosen one, let me tell you what the world doesn't understand about silence. They think it's emptiness. They think it's weakness. They think it means God has abandoned you, left you in some spiritual wasteland to figure it out on your own. But here's what they're missing. God uses silence to fill. Right now, while you're feeling this strange heaviness, this divine exhaustion that no amount of coffee can cure, something ancient and sacred is happening in your soul. You're not just resting. You're not just tired. You are in the womb of warfare. Think about Moses. 40 years in the desert before he ever saw a burning bush. 40 years of silence. 40 years where it seemed like nothing was happening. But God wasn't sleeping on Moses. He was surgically removing the Egyptian prince so the Hebrew deliverer could emerge. In that desert silence, pride was being scraped away, self-reliance was being starved out, and humility, true humility, was being carved deep into his character. Moses thought he was herding sheep. God knew he was training to shepherd a nation. And what about Jesus? 3 days in a tomb, 3 days of absolute silence. The disciples thought it was over. Hell thought it had won. But in that dark, quiet grave, the greatest victory in human history was being orchestrated. Death was being conquered. Sin was being defeated, and resurrection power was being birthed in the darkness. The tomb wasn't Jesus's end. It was his beginning. Chosen one, what if your silence isn't punishment? What if it's preparation? Because right now, while you're feeling disconnected from the noise of this world, God is performing soul surgery. He's reaching into places no therapist could touch, no medication could heal, no human wisdom could repair. He's resetting your nervous system that's been hijacked by decades of survival mode. He's realigning hormones that stress has thrown completely out of balance. He's healing trauma that's been buried so deep you forgot it was even there. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? That wound that made you the strong one. That betrayal that taught you never to trust completely. That loss that convinced you to guard your heart like Fort Knox. That moment when you decided you'd rather carry the world on your shoulders than risk being disappointed again. You've been the reliable one, the unshakable one, the one everyone calls when their world is falling apart, because yours always seems so put together. But God sees what they don't see. He sees the exhaustion behind your smile. He sees the loneliness behind your strength. He sees the little child inside you who's been holding their breath for decades, waiting for someone else to be strong for once. And he's saying, enough. This incubation isn't about making you stronger. It's about letting you be human again. It's about teaching you that your worth isn't measured by how much weight you can carry, but by how deeply you can receive love. It's about discovering that the God who holds the universe together can certainly handle your problems while you sleep. Remember Elijah, after calling down fire from heaven, after defeating 450 prophets of Baal, after proving God's power in the most dramatic way possible, he ran. He hid in a cave. He was depressed, exhausted, ready to die. And what did God do? Did he rebuke him? Did he remind him of his calling? Did he tell him to get back out there and keep fighting? Number God whispered. God fed him. God let him sleep. Because even prophets need permission to collapse. Even warriors need to be held. Even the chosen ones need to remember their children first. Chosen one, What if this darkness you're walking through isn't abandonment? What if it's the most intimate love you've ever experienced? What if God is pulling you so close to his heart that the world's noise can't reach you? What if he's whispering secrets in your spirit that can only be heard in absolute silence? You see, the enemy wants you to think this pause means you're falling behind, that while you're resting, everyone else is getting ahead, that this spiritual hibernation is somehow failure, but that's exactly what he wants you to believe. Because he knows what God is building in the darkness. He knows that when you emerge from this sacred space, you won't just be rested, you'll be resurrected. Your compassion will be deeper because you've experienced divine comfort. Your wisdom will be sharper because you've learned to hear God's voice above the chaos. Your strength will be supernatural because it won't be rooted in your own willpower anymore. It'll be anchored in the unshakable truth that the God who never sleeps is always working on your behalf. Right now, God is downloading new dreams into your spirit. He's installing upgraded software in your mind. He's replacing old defense mechanisms with new faith reflexes. And this process, this holy reconstruction, it can't happen while you're busy. It can't happen while you're distracted. It can't happen while you're trying to prove you're okay. It can only happen in surrender. God is not asking you to do anything right now. He's asking you to let go. Let go of the need to have it all figured out. Let go of the pressure to be everyone's rock. Let go of the lie that your value comes from your productivity. Just let go. Because in this sacred space between who you were and who you're becoming, miracles happen. In this divine pause between the old season and the new one, God works. In this holy darkness, light is being formed. And when you finally open your eyes, when this incubation period ends, you're going to wonder why you ever feared the silence. Because you'll realize it wasn't emptiness at all. It was fullness waiting to be born. But here's what you need to understand about this process. Look around you right now. I mean, really look. The world is coming apart at the seams. Turn on any news channel and what do you see? Economic collapse, political chaos, healthcare systems failing, families torn apart, violence in the streets, wars and rumors of wars. The very foundations of society are shaking like a house built on sand. And here's what's driving people to madness. They're trying to find peace in a world that's designed for panic. They're searching for stability in systems that were never meant to last. They're looking for security in governments, in bank accounts, in relationships with people who are just as broken and confused as they are. But you, chosen one, you're different. While everyone else is running around like chickens with their heads cut off, something supernatural is happening inside you. There's a calm that doesn't make sense, a peace that defies explanation, a stillness that's stronger than the storm. You know why? Because you're not getting your peace from this world. You're connected to something higher, something eternal, something unshakable. Psalm 91 says it like this: "He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty." Not might rest, not could rest, will rest. It's a promise. It's a guarantee. It's a done deal. But here's what most people miss about that shelter. They think it's a physical place. They think it's a building, a location, somewhere you go when trouble comes. Wrong. Dead wrong. The shelter is not a place. The shelter is a presence. You are literally wrapped in the arms of Almighty God right now. His presence is surrounding you like a fortress. His peace is guarding your mind like an army. His love is covering you like armor that no weapon can penetrate. While the world is losing its mind, you're finding yours. While they're panicking, you're praying. While they're screaming, you're sleeping. Why? Because you know something they don't know. You serve a God who never loses control, never gets surprised, never runs out of options. But here's where it gets radical. When God hides you in his shelter, he doesn't just protect you, He fights for you. Exodus 14:14 says, "The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." Did you catch that? You need only to be still. Your job is not to figure it all out. Your job is not to fix everything. Your job is not to save the world. Your job is to be still and watch God work. Think about this for a moment. While you're resting in His presence, God is moving heaven and earth on your behalf. While you're sleeping peacefully, He's working the night shift. While you're quiet, He's speaking to kings and presidents and CEOs about your situation. This stillness you've been feeling, it's not laziness, it's not depression, it's not weakness, it's strategy, divine strategy. The enemy wants you running around in circles, wearing yourself out, burning yourself up, stressing yourself sick. But God says, be still and know that I am God. Not be busy, not be worried, not be frantic. Be still. You see, there's a war going on that most people can't see. It's not being fought in Ukraine or Gaza or Washington, D.C. It's being fought in the heavenly realm. It's a spiritual war between the kingdom of light and the kingdom of darkness. And guess what? You're not just a spectator. You're a prize that's being fought over. The enemy wants to steal your peace, kill your joy, and destroy your faith. But God has placed you in a position where the enemy can't touch you. You're in the secret place of the Most High. You're under the shadow of His wings. You're hidden in the cleft of the rock. And from that position of rest, from that place of peace, from that shelter of safety, you're not just surviving the storm. You're commanding it. When Jesus was in the boat with His disciples and the storm arose, what did He do? Did He panic? Did He start bailing water? Did He cry out to heaven for help? He was sleeping, resting, at peace. And when He woke up, He didn't pray about the storm. He spoke to it. Peace, be still. And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. That same authority lives in you. That same peace flows through you. That same power operates in you. If this word is shifting you, stop right now and declare in the comments, I trust the shelter. I surrender the striving. The truth is, you've been trying to fight battles that aren't yours to fight. You've been carrying burdens that aren't yours to carry. You've been solving problems that aren't yours to solve. But God is saying, let me handle this. You just rest in my presence. And here's the beautiful paradox. The more you rest, the more powerful you become. The stiller you get, the stronger you grow. The quieter you become, the louder your authority rings in the spirit realm. Your enemies are watching you right now, and they can't figure out why you're not falling apart like everyone else. They can't understand why you're not stressed, why you're not worried, why you're not losing sleep. And it's driving them crazy because they know there's something different about you. What they don't realize is that you've tapped into a power source that this world doesn't understand. You're plugged into the infinite. You're connected to the eternal. You're sheltered by the invincible. But this brings us to a critical question that will determine everything about your future. But here's what's really happening while you think you're just tired, chosen one. This isn't exhaustion. This is excavation. God isn't letting you sleep because you're weak. He's shutting down your conscious mind because He needs access to your subconscious programming. Right now, while you feel like you're doing nothing, heaven is performing the most sophisticated surgery on your soul. At the cellular level, at the neurological level, at the spiritual frequency where miracles are manufactured. You've been running on broken code for years. Trauma responses disguised as strength, fear patterns masked as wisdom, survival instincts that kept you alive but killed your dreams. And God is saying, enough. I'm rewriting the operating system of your heart. This isn't therapy, dear one. This is transformation that bypasses your mind and goes straight to your molecular structure. Listen to what Isaiah 40:31 promises. But those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. That word renew in Hebrew means to exchange, to alter, to rebuild from the foundation up. You're not getting your old strength back. You're getting an entirely new kind of power. While you've been wondering why you can't push through like you used to, God has been literally reconstructing your nervous system. Those stress hormones that kept you in constant fight or flight mode, they're being flushed out. Those neural pathways that automatically jumped to worst-case scenarios, they're being rewired to default to faith instead of fear. You think you're losing your edge, but you're gaining your essence. And here's the part that will shock you. Your body is aging backward during this process, not because of some wellness trend or supplement, because when stress leaves your system, when cortisol stops flooding your bloodstream, when your soul finally feels safe enough to exhale, your cells remember how to regenerate instead of just survive. You're going to wake up from this season looking younger, moving lighter, thinking clearer, not because you worked out harder or ate better, because you let God work deeper. But the physical transformation is just the beginning. Your voice is being rebuilt, chosen one. That confidence that got buried under years of criticism and rejection, it's being excavated. That creativity that got suffocated by responsibility and routine, it's being resurrected. That clarity of purpose that got clouded by other people's opinions, it's being clarified. You've been speaking from wounds for so long, you forgot what your real voice sounds like. But God is touching your tongue like he did Isaiah's. Then one of the seraphims flew unto me, having a live coal in his hand, and he laid it upon my mouth and said, Lo, this hath touched thy lips, and thine iniquity is taken away. Isaiah 6:6, -7. Your voice is being purified by divine fire. When you speak again, it won't be from pain, it will be from power. It won't echo insecurity, it will carry the vibration of heaven itself. This is why people have been avoiding you lately. Not because you're less lovable, but because your frequency is shifting. You're being tuned to a different station. And some people can only handle so much light before they feel exposed by your presence. Don't take it personally. Take it prophetically. Your mind is being upgraded too. Those racing thoughts that kept you awake at night, that mental chatter that never stopped analyzing, worrying, replaying conversations, God is installing new software, divine intelligence, supernatural discernment. The mind of Christ that Paul talks about in 1 Corinthians 2:16. You're going to start knowing things you never studied, seeing solutions you never searched for, understanding people's hearts before they open their mouths. This isn't psychic ability. This is prophetic sensitivity. And it's your inheritance as a child of the Most High. But here's what's going to blow your mind. You're not just being restored to who you were. You're being transformed into who you're becoming. This incubation isn't taking you backward. It's preparing you for a future so bright, so powerful, so anointed that your old self couldn't have handled it. Think about a caterpillar in its cocoon. It doesn't just rest and wake up with wings. Its entire body literally dissolves into cellular soup before it reorganizes into something completely new. You're in your cocoon right now. And what feels like dissolution is actually divine reconstruction. The butterfly doesn't remember being a caterpillar, and the you that emerges from this season won't remember the limitations of the old you. You've been asking God when this fog will lift. But what if I told you the fog isn't the problem? What if the fog is the protection? What if God has wrapped you in divine camouflage because the enemy is looking for the old you, but he can't find the new you that's being formed in secret? When Moses came down from Mount Sinai, his face was so radiant that the Israelites couldn't look at him. That's what's happening to you right now. You're being charged with glory. And when this process is complete, when you step out of this sacred hibernation, people are going to wonder what happened to you. But you'll know. You didn't just survive this season. You were rewired by the master electrician himself. The question isn't whether this transformation is real. The question is, are you ready to stop fighting it and start receiving it? But what happens when you wake up? What happens when this divine incubation period ends and you open your eyes to a world that kept spinning while you were being reconstructed in the secret place of the Most High? Let me tell you something that will shake you to your core, chosen one. When you rise from this sacred stillness, you won't be back. You'll be brand new. This isn't recovery. This is resurrection. You've been worried about lost time, haven't you? Counting the days, the weeks, maybe even months that you've felt spiritually sedated. You've watched your peers advance while you've been in what felt like spiritual suspended animation. But here's what heaven has been hiding from your natural understanding. You weren't being delayed. You were being delivered. Right now, as I speak these words, there are cellular changes happening in your body. There are neural pathways being rewired in your mind. There are spiritual frequencies being recalibrated in your soul. God has been performing surgery on your very essence, and you've been under His divine anesthesia. The Bible says in Isaiah 60:1, "Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you." But notice it doesn't say, "Return to your light." It says, "Your light has come." This is new light, fresh glory, unprecedented radiance. When you emerge from this holy hibernation, people will ask where you've been. Let your glow answer for you. Let the peace that radiates from your presence speak louder than any explanation ever could. Let the authority that now flows through your voice silence every question about your absence. You think you've been sleeping your destiny away. You've been steeping in it. Like tea leaves soaking in hot water, every hour of this incubation has been extracting the essence of who God created you to be. The flavor of your purpose has been intensifying in the darkness. But here's where it gets controversial, and I need you to hear this clearly. The world will try to make you feel guilty for this season. They'll call it laziness. They'll call it depression. They'll call it wasted time. But chosen one, what the world calls delay, heaven calls development. You weren't made for their timeline anyway. You weren't created to compete in their race. While they've been running in circles, you've been soaking in circles of glory. While they've been networking, you've been networking with the Holy Spirit. While they've been building platforms, God has been building your character. And now comes the moment that will separate you from everyone who doubted your disappearance. This is not a comeback. This is a commissioning. The difference between a comeback and a commissioning is this. A comeback tries to return to where you were. A commissioning launches you to where you've never been. Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness before God commissioned him to deliver an entire nation. Was he behind, or was he being prepared for something no Egyptian education could have taught him? Joseph spent years in prison before Pharaoh called him to interpret dreams and manage the economy of the known world. Was he wasting time, or was he being positioned for divine promotion? You thought this was a pause. Heaven calls it a promotion. The confusion you felt, the isolation, the strange tiredness that sleep couldn't cure, all of it has been God downloading new software into your spiritual operating system. You've been getting upgraded while you thought you were being downgraded. But let me hit you with a truth that might hurt before it heals. You needed this incubation because the old you couldn't handle what's coming. The you who was stressed, striving, and struggling would have collapsed under the weight of the glory God is about to release through your life. So He shut you down to build you up. He silenced you to strengthen you. He hid you to heal you. And now, when you re-emerge, you'll carry a presence that can't be taught in seminars or conferences. You'll operate with an authority that comes only from intimate time in the presence of the Almighty. People will sense something different about you before you even speak. Your very atmosphere will shift rooms. Why? Because you've been in the secret place where revelation downloads faster than any earthly education. You've been in the place where 1 hour with God accomplishes more than a year of human effort. The old you tried to make things happen. The new you will watch things happen. The old you fought for recognition. The new you will command respect without asking for it. The old you needed validation from people. The new you will be validated by the very presence of God that radiates from your being. And here's the promise I'm making over your life right now, backed by the authority of Scripture. When you arise from this incubation, you won't just be returning to your old life with new energy. You'll be entering a completely new dimension of living. New doors will recognize your spiritual frequency and open automatically. New relationships will gravitate toward the light you carry. New opportunities will pursue you instead of you chasing them. But are you ready for the most shocking truth of all? This incubation period, this season that felt like punishment, was actually God's way of protecting you from settling for anything less than His absolute best for your life. You're not behind, chosen one. You're being reborn. And what's about to emerge from this divine cocoon will astonish even you. The question is, are you ready to stop mourning your metamorphosis and start celebrating your commissioning? Listen to me carefully, because what I'm about to tell you is going to shatter every lie you've believed about your age, your time, and your purpose. You think you're too old. You think you're too late. You think you've missed your moment, that your season has passed, that God has moved on to younger, fresher vessels. But chosen one, let me tell you what heaven sees when it looks at you right now. God sees Samuel, who didn't begin his prophetic ministry until his hair was silver. He sees Moses, who was 80 years old when he stood before Pharaoh and said, "Let my people go." He sees Anna, the prophetess, who was 84 when she recognized the Messiah in the temple courts. Your wrinkles aren't disqualifications, they're credentials. The enemy has spent decades convincing you that your best days are behind you, that your dreams expired with your youth, that your calling has a statute of limitations. But here's what hell doesn't want you to know. God's greatest generals have always been seasoned warriors. You think this incubation, this divine pause, this holy hibernation has been wasted time. But what if I told you that everything you've endured, every heartbreak, every disappointment, every closed door, was God preparing you for this exact moment? What if your pain was your preparation? What if your waiting was your warrior training? The curtain is being drawn back, and it's your name that's being called. Right now, as you sit there doubting whether God still has a plan for your life, heaven is announcing your entrance. This isn't the end of your story. This is the scene shift before the grand reveal. You've been living in the prologue, thinking it was the conclusion. But chosen one, the main act hasn't even started yet. Look at the pattern in Scripture. Every great calling began with concealment. Joseph was hidden in a pit before he ruled a palace. David was hidden in caves before he conquered kingdoms. Jesus himself was hidden in a manger before he manifested as Messiah. The greater the calling, the deeper the hiding. The more significant the assignment, the longer the incubation. You've been wondering why God has been so quiet, why the doors have been closed, why the opportunities have dried up, why your energy has been sapped, why you felt like you're moving through spiritual molasses. Here's why. God has been pulling you away from the noise so you can hear the assignment clearly. But some of you are resisting this unveiling because you've gotten comfortable in your cocoon. You've made peace with being hidden. You've settled into the safety of invisibility. But cocoons were never meant to be permanent residences. They're transition chambers. And your metamorphosis is complete. Heaven is no longer whispering. Heaven is announcing. The gifts that you buried because people didn't understand them are being resurrected. The dreams that you declared dead are being revived. The calling that you convinced yourself was just youthful idealism is being validated by the voice of the Almighty. You think you're re-entering the world, the same person who went into this divine incubation. But that's impossible. You can't spend time with God and remain unchanged. You can't be sheltered in His presence and emerge unaltered. You can't be refined in His fire and come out the same. You are not re-entering the world as you were. You are returning as the answer to someone else's prayer. Somewhere right now, someone is crying out to God for wisdom, and He's preparing to send them you. Someone is desperate for hope, and He's about to deploy your testimony. Someone is drowning in despair, and your breakthrough is going to become their lifeline. The exhaustion you felt isn't because you're wearing out. It's because you're being rewired. The confusion isn't because God is absent. It's because He's recalibrating your spiritual GPS for a destination you never imagined. The isolation isn't abandonment, it's appointment preparation. But here's what terrifies the enemy. Your emergence is going to expose his lies. When you step into your calling at 70, 80, 90 years old, you're going to shatter the myth that purpose has an expiration date. When you start speaking with authority that can only come from intimate encounters with the divine, you're going to silence every voice that said you were too old to matter. The world is about to witness what happens when God removes the wrapping from a gift. He's been preparing for decades. They're going to see what happens when experience meets anointing, when wisdom collides with divine appointment, when someone who's been tested by time finally steps into their moment. Your incubation is ending. Your calling is being unveiled. Your moment is arriving. And the question that will determine everything is this: will you step out of the cocoon when God says it's time, or will you try to crawl back into the safety of hiddenness? Because what comes next isn't just about you anymore. Listen to me, chosen one. The enemy couldn't stop your birth, so he tried to mute your voice. For years now, you've been walking through what felt like spiritual quicksand. Every step forward seemed to pull you deeper into confusion. Every prayer you whispered seemed to echo back empty. Every door you knocked on slammed shut before you could even state your name. And somewhere in that silence, somewhere in that crushing weight of delay, you started believing the lie. You started thinking you were disqualified, that maybe God changed His mind about you, that perhaps you misheard His voice all those years ago when He whispered your name and called you chosen. But here's what the enemy hoped you'd never realize: that silence wasn't God's rejection, it was hell's fear. You see, when darkness recognizes the light that's been planted inside you, it doesn't attack your future, it attacks your faith in that future. It doesn't try to kill your calling. It tries to convince you that your calling was never real to begin with. The depression that hit you like a freight train at 2 a.m., the isolation that made you feel like you were speaking a language nobody else understood, the grief that seemed to have no beginning and no end, that wasn't punishment, dear one. That was prophecy under pressure. Think about this. When a pearl is formed, it starts with irritation. A grain of sand gets trapped inside an oyster, and instead of the oyster dying from the foreign invasion, it begins to coat that irritation with layer after layer of protection. What once threatened to destroy it becomes the very thing that creates something precious. Your pain has been creating your pearl. But the enemy knows something about pearls that most people don't. He knows that the most valuable ones are formed in the deepest, darkest waters. He knows that pressure doesn't break what God is building, it beautifies it. So he tried a different strategy. If he couldn't crush you, he'd convince you to crush yourself. If he couldn't silence God's voice over your life, he'd turn up the volume on every other voice until you couldn't hear heaven anymore. Remember when David was anointed king, but spent years running for his life in caves? Remember when Joseph received dreams of ruling, but spent years forgotten in a prison cell? Remember when Moses was called to deliver Israel, but spent 40 years herding sheep in the wilderness? The enemy's strategy hasn't changed. He still tries to make you believe that delay means denial, that silence means abandonment, that struggle means you're somehow outside of God's will. But I'm here to tell you something that will shatter every lie you've been carrying. God hasn't been silent because He's forgotten you. He's been silent because He's been working. And what He's been working on is so massive, so unprecedented, so powerful that it required this season of hiddenness to complete. Think of an arrow. The archer doesn't pull it back to hurt it. He pulls it back to position it. The further back that arrow is drawn, the more power it accumulates. The longer it stays in that stretched, uncomfortable position, the greater the force that builds behind it. And when the archer finally releases his grip, that arrow doesn't just move forward, it flies, it soars, it hits targets that seemed impossible to reach. You've been pulled back, chosen one, stretched beyond what felt comfortable, held in a position that made no sense to anyone watching. But that wasn't your breakdown, that was your wind-up. Every sleepless night was adding tension to your spiritual bow. Every unanswered prayer was increasing the power behind your purpose. Every closed door was redirecting your trajectory toward a target you couldn't even see yet. The enemy knew this. That's why he worked so hard to convince you that the pulling back was punishment instead of preparation. That's why he whispered that you were moving backward when you were actually being positioned for breakthrough. But here's what terrifies him most. You're about to be released. All that stored energy, all that accumulated power, all that pressure that nearly broke you, is about to become the very force that propels you into your destiny. The same silence that once felt like abandonment is about to become the soundtrack of your acceleration. Because when God finally says now, when He finally releases His grip on your life, you're not just going to walk into your next season, you're going to explode into it. The target you're aimed at isn't just personal blessing, it's generational breakthrough. It's not just individual victory, it's kingdom advancement. The enemy didn't fear your potential, he feared your impact. He knew that once you understood the power of your positioning, once you realized that your pulling back was actually your preparation, nothing in hell or earth would be able to stop what God was about to release through you. If you've felt silenced, left behind, emotionally bruised, I want you to type this right now. This wasn't my breakdown, it was my wind-up. Because the season of stretching is over, the time of pulling back has ended. God is reaching for His bow, and He's about to let you fly. But first, you need to understand exactly where you've been all this time and why it was necessary for your safety. Now here's where it gets supernatural, chosen one. What I'm about to tell you will either sound like madness to your logical mind, or it will ignite a fire in your spirit that's been dormant for years. You're about to enter a realm where ideas that aren't yours start flooding your consciousness, where strategies you never studied for begin downloading into your spirit, where you wake up at 3 a.m. with solutions to problems you didn't even know existed. This isn't New Age mysticism. This is ancient biblical reality. And it's happening to you right now, whether you recognize it or not. Let me ask you something that's going to shake your foundation. Have you been having dreams lately that feel more real than your waking life? Have random thoughts been dropping into your mind that sound nothing like your usual internal dialogue? Have you caught yourself knowing things you never learned? That's not your imagination running wild. That's heaven, downloading divine intelligence directly into your spirit while the world thinks you're just sleeping. Think about Noah. God told him to build a boat when there wasn't a cloud in the sky, not a drop of rain in the forecast. No meteorologist predicting a flood, just a word from heaven that defied every natural indicator. The man spent years hammering wood while his neighbors called him crazy. But here's what they didn't understand. Noah wasn't building based on weather patterns. He was building based on divine revelation. He wasn't responding to what he could see. He was preparing for what God had shown him. And when the first raindrop fell, when the skies opened up and vindicated every nail he'd hammered in faith, Noah's obedience to the impossible became the salvation of humanity itself. You think you've been idle, but heaven has been updating your operating system. While others have been networking, you've been rewiring. While they've been climbing ladders, you've been receiving downloads. While they've been making moves, God has been making you ready for moves they can't even comprehend. Consider Joseph in that prison cell. 20 years old, forgotten by everyone who mattered, rotting in Egyptian custody for a crime he didn't commit. No LinkedIn profile, no business cards, no platform to promote his gifts. But God wasn't developing Joseph's resume, he was developing Joseph's capacity. In that cell, away from the noise and politics of Potiphar's house, away from the temptations and distractions of Egyptian society, God was programming Joseph with governmental wisdom. Joseph wasn't just dreaming about leadership, he was being spiritually prepared to handle it. And when Pharaoh needed someone to interpret dreams and manage the greatest economic crisis in Egyptian history, the man who emerged from prison wasn't the same broken boy who'd been thrown into it. He carried supernatural wisdom, administrative genius, economic insight that saved 2 nations from starvation. Not because he went to business school, because he went to God's school of solitary preparation. That's exactly where you've been, chosen one. That isolation you felt, that wasn't abandonment, that was advanced placement. That quietness you've experienced, that wasn't God's silence, that was God's classroom. He's been downloading revelation into your spirit that you won't find in any university, teaching you strategies that aren't in any business book, giving you insights that would take others decades to develop through trial and error. You think you've wasted time, but God has been preparing you for assignments that don't exist yet, for problems that haven't surfaced yet, for leadership positions that haven't been created yet. The knowledge flooding your mind right now isn't coming from podcasts or YouTube videos. It's coming from the throne room of heaven. The creativity stirring in your spirit isn't inspired by what you've seen others do. It's birthed by what God is showing you in the realm of the impossible. This is why the enemy worked so hard to convince you that your season of waiting was wasted time. He knew that if you understood what was really happening during your hiddenness, if you realized that God was actually fast-tracking your spiritual education while the world thought you were standing still, nothing would be able to stop what's about to be released through you. Because here's the shocking truth that's about to change everything. God is about to do through your stillness what others have failed to do through striving. While they've been burning out, you've been burning bright in the hidden place. While they've been grinding, you've been growing. While they've been hustling for position, God has been positioning you for impact that will make their achievements look like practice runs. The supernatural intelligence you're carrying right now isn't theoretical. It's practical. It's not philosophical. It's profitable. It's not just spiritual. It's strategic. You're about to walk into rooms where people will ask you questions, and words will come out of your mouth that you didn't study for. You're going to solve problems with solutions that download in real time. You're going to make decisions with confidence that comes from a source deeper than research or experience. And when they ask you how you knew what to do, how you saw what they missed, how you understood what no one else could grasp, you'll realize that your season of hiddenness wasn't punishment. It was PhD-level preparation in the University of Divine Wisdom. But there's something even more powerful that God is about to reveal about your time of incubation. Something that will explain not just what you've been receiving, but what you've been protected from. Chosen one, as we come to the end of this sacred moment together, I need you to hold on to 3 unshakable truths that will carry you through whatever comes next. First, remember this. Your season of hiddenness was never about punishment. It was about preparation. God didn't silence you because he was disappointed in you. He sheltered you because he was developing something inside you that the world isn't ready to see yet. Every day you felt forgotten, you were actually being formed. Every night you cried out in confusion, heaven was downloading clarity into your spirit. Second, understand that your pace is not behind God's plan. While others seem to race ahead, you were being positioned for a different kind of breakthrough. The same God who kept Noah building when there was no rain, who sustained Joseph through years in prison, who prepared Moses in the wilderness for 40 years. That same God has been orchestrating every detail of your journey with precision and purpose. Third, and most importantly, recognize that you are not walking this path alone. Yes, it felt lonely. Yes, there were nights when the silence seemed deafening, but you have never been abandoned. Not for 1 second, not for one breath. The same God who sheltered you in your incubation is the same God who will strengthen you for what's coming next. And you're not just connected to heaven. You're connected to a community of chosen ones who understand exactly what you've been through. Right here, in this very comment section, there are people who felt the same divine pause, who experienced the same sacred stillness, who wondered if they were losing their minds when they were actually finding their purpose. Let me ask you this. Now that you understand what God has been doing during your time of waiting, how will you respond differently to His timing in your life? Will you trust the pause as much as you celebrate the breakthrough? And now, before you leave this place, let me pray over you with the authority of someone who has watched God's faithfulness for 5 decades and who believes with everything in me that your greatest days are not behind you, but ahead of you. Father God, I place my hand on the shoulder of every chosen one watching this message right now. Lord, they have been through the valley. They have walked through seasons that nearly broke them. They have questioned your timing, your methods, and even your love. But you never stopped working. You never stopped caring. You never stopped preparing them for this moment. I pray that you would open their eyes to see what you've been building in the secret place. Give them supernatural strength for the road ahead. Let them feel your presence in ways that silence every doubt and fear. Restore their confidence in your voice. Rekindle their faith in your promises. And release them into the fullness of everything you've been preparing them for. Break every chain of delay that the enemy has tried to place around their destiny. Open doors that no man can shut. Bring connections that will accelerate their purpose. And let your favor follow them wherever they go. Lord, let them wake up tomorrow with a fire in their spirit that cannot be extinguished. Let them walk with authority that comes from knowing they are loved, chosen, and called by the Most High God. And when they step into their next season, let the world see not just what they've accomplished, but who they've become in you. In Jesus' mighty name, Amen. Now, chosen one, I want you to do something powerful. In the comments below, share one word that describes how you're feeling right now after hearing this message. Just one word. Let it be your declaration, your testimony, your signal to heaven and to this community that you're ready for what God has next. And if this message touched your heart, if it gave you hope when you needed it most, please share it with someone else who might be walking through their own season of divine incubation. Because somewhere out there, another chosen one is wondering if they're alone, if they're forgotten, if they're falling behind. Let them know they're not. Let them know there's a community here ready to stand with them in prayer and faith. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell, because this conversation is far from over. We're building something powerful here, a community of chosen ones who understand that God's timing is perfect, even when it doesn't make sense to our natural minds. Thank you for staying with me through this entire message. Thank you for having the courage to listen when others would have scrolled away. Thank you for being here, for being you, and for trusting that your story isn't over. Your breakthrough is coming, chosen one, and when it arrives, you'll understand why the wait was worth it. Stay strong, stay faithful, Stay expectant. God is not finished with you yet.